Okay, can you hear me? Okay, you can. Perfect. So let's talk about a little bit about the token economics. We have only 30 minutes, so we cannot cover everything, but we will try. Let's start for the first fundamental question. What is exactly the value of the token? We are speaking about the tokens, we are selling tokens, we are buying tokens, we are creating tokens. But what is the value come from? How we can create value, how we can manage value, how we can work with it, and how this value is correlated with the business itself. And the funny thing is that tokens are usually not backed by any real resource, a lot like traditional fiat currencies. They're just concepts, a lot like traditional fiat currencies. And the demand for the token is artificially generated, a lot like traditional fiat currencies. In the case of the fiat currencies, it's the government who creates demand for the currency itself. In the case of a token, it's a company, and it's business of the company who creates the demand for the token. So what is the value, you may ask? And think about it a little bit. What is the value of a currency? If there is nothing more than the concept, what is it? And the answer is that the value of the currency and the value of the token is trust. Nothing more but belief. And the stronger the belief is, the more value is in the currency, the more value is in the token. So let us think about a little bit how we can create and manage this value. And if we think about the value of the token as a value of the trust, we have a very perfect example from our life. It's a credibility of the person. Think about that. It acts a lot like that. And like a person can have an intrinsic credibility that can be grown over time by doing and achieving. So the token can do. And we have a perfect example. That example is a Bitcoin, a digital gold in the world. But this process, unfortunately, takes time. It wouldn't happen overnight. For the Bitcoin, it took 10 years to become famous, to grow intrinsic trust, and to gain intrinsic value. Unfortunately, in a business environment, we don't have a luxury to spend 10 years to grow the value of the token. So we need a shortcut. And we need a shortcut in our life as well, because we need our credibility right after we started operating in an environment, in a business environment. So what we do when we need a credibility in a real business environment, we ask for introduction for a person who already has a credibility. Or we start working for a brand that already has a credibility. I'm from Google, I'm from Microsoft, I'm from Facebook. So we do the same with tokens. Initially, on the first period of life of the token, this is exactly the team and the business who give the credibility and value to the token. And this is very interesting, because it means that the value of the token at this particular moment of time is not connected to the token itself. You can think about that value like a cloud on top of all the tokens, and tokens like a small boxes. And the value, that extrinsic value, the credibility of the team, the credibility of the project is evenly distributed among all the boxes. And what would happen if you destroy a token during the first period of time? Well, you destroy the box. But you wouldn't destroy the value, because the value is not in the token itself. It's in the team, and it's in the business. So you just redistribute the value among the rest of the tokens. So that's funny, but OK. By destroying token, you actually increase the value of the rest of the tokens. OK. Now, if we accept this theory, at least for a moment, let's think about the ICO as a three-step process. The first is the ICO itself, before the token sale is ended, and before the token is issued, and before the business started to operate with token. This is a pure marketing part, nothing more. There is no economy, there is no real product, it's just a presentation. It's a huge marketing campaign, and the goal of this campaign is to increase the credibility of the team and to increase the credibility of the project. because this credibility we would need on the later stage to power our token. Then the party is over. We raise the funds, ICO ended. Now, we have a huge amount of tokens in the market and a very little demand for these tokens. What would happen with the product if there is a very huge supply and a very little demand? The price of this product would go down, unfortunately. And it doesn't matter what was the price tag during the ICO. The real economical value, the real value of the token after the ICO, unfortunately, is close to zero, realistically. And it would take time until the demand for the token will grow enough to reach the supply. And at the point when they intersect with each other, when the prices would be, the token would get a real price. But before, we need to support the price of the token, and we need to create the value of the token artificially. And this is very critical during this particular time to make sure that we can reach a tipping point soon enough. So, because if we wouldn't do that, we will spend our money to support this price, and we will spend our money to support our token. And if it takes us more than 2 or 3 years to support our token, well, we can probably spend all the money we raised through the ICO process. So when we design a token economy, we specifically design it for this particular period of time after the ICO, when we need to match the price of the token with a real business economy, with a real demand from the business. And our goal is to make sure that we can reach this tipping point soon enough. And how we can do it? Well, since we are talking about the trust, we are talking about the behavioral economy and behavioral finance, which means that to support our token, we need to create a set of beliefs in people in the market. We cannot satisfy the price of the token by pure economical reason, but we can do it by creating an impression. And this is exactly what we need to make happen. How we can create impression? We need to communicate a very simple idea, that the price of the token and that the value of the token will go up over time. What would happen if people do believe in this idea? People would start treating your token as something with a value. They would start keep it. They would remove it from the exchanges. They would keep it on the wallet. And you would need to spend less time and less money to match the real demand. And this is exactly how the real currencies operate. Imagine what would happen if all the people who hold the United States dollars would spend them simultaneously. It would destroy the economy and the dollar overnight. And only belief keeps dollar from ruining. And we need to create the same belief for our tokens. If we wouldn't be able to create this belief, the token will die. If you would be able to create this belief, the token will survive. So what is the role of the business in this period of time? Business is a vehicle, like a rocket ship to deliver your token to the moon. Your business needs to create an artificial demand for your token. The goal of the business to lend trust to the token, to help you to sustain the value of the token during the first months of the token's life, until the value of the token, the intrinsic value of the token, will start growing itself over time. What would happen if this process will take some time and successfully will go, for example, for 5 years, probably? We can reach the point when the intrinsic value of the token is big enough for the token to become sustainable itself. Token don't need your business anymore to survive. You create a second Bitcoin, you create a second Ethereum. Your business is not needed to support your token. You created a sustainable ecosystem. The power of belief in the value of the token is strong enough for the token to become independent from your business. And even if your business would die during this period, after that period of time, your token will survive. That's very funny, but this is true. So what we need to think about the business of the company and the business of the token as two separate businesses. And the goal of the company is to help the token to survive during the hard time and to survive long enough to create an internal intrinsic value. So, how we can create a model that would support something like that? First, we need to start thinking about the demand. When we give tokens away in any forms, it doesn't mean anything. Because people who will get something for free, they will just try to sell it immediately to gain some profit. And what would happen if they put their tokens to the exchange? Nothing would happen, because if there is no demand, nobody will buy this token from them. They will try to put new tokens with lesser price, with lesser, until the token would die eventually. So when we think about creating an economy for the token economy for the project, for the ICO, we need to think about the demand first. And this is the most critical factor for us. How does it work? So I believe that some of us, please raise your hand who has an ICO ongoing right now or thinking about ICO. OK, enough people. So give a minute. Think about how you can create, who in your ecosystem, in your project, in your ICO has to buy tokens to use them inside of your product. Not people who give it, but people who need tokens to buy, if there is such people in your system. 1 minute. OK, everyone found it in your project? Raise the hands who didn't find any person who need to buy tokens by natural reasons. Well, perfect. Now we have a foundation. Then think about how many tokens they would need to buy in order to create a high velocity of your token over the period of time. You will probably raise 30 or 50 millions by selling your tokens, and which means that your business has to provide velocity at least 10 or 15 millions per month in order to every token to be in act, to operate inside of the ecosystem. And we have a premise that at least 2/3 of these tokens would still be held on the wallets. Very optimistic promise. Because realistically, every token can go to the exchange immediately. Think about it. Demand is very crucial. If we cannot create enough demand for a very short period of time for our token, we need to create this demand artificially. We need to market make our token on the exchange. We need to create this, because people would go to sell our tokens and the only buyer would be we. Not the actual users of your product, not the actual buyers of your token inside of your product. Only you, as a company, as an issuer, can be the market maker of your token. And our goal is to create an ecosystem in which the demand for a token would grow exponentially. It's OK. If your solution is centralized, and your economy is pure speculative economy, it's pretty easy. It would work exactly like you buy back your tokens from the market just by forcing people to pay you in your tokens. So in order to create enough deficit, you just need to buy back your tokens. You need to provide your services for the amount of money you raised. So you issue tokens for 15 millions. You provide services for 15 million, so no more tokens in the market. You create a deficit. Deficit goes up. Unfortunately, this model is not for the North American market, and it's okay. This model has some issues with law, especially with Securities and Exchange Commission. So we need to think about how this token would operate in a more decentralized environment. And we have two models. First model is a marketplace. The best ideal solution you can create is a marketplace when your token would operate as an internal currency. Advantage of this model, this marketplace would grow faster because of the effort of others, not just your efforts. So it's much easier for you to create enough demand for a very short period of time. Disadvantage of this model? Well, two-side market is hard to create. And for most startups, they're product or service startups, not a marketplace. So you need to adapt your model, your initial product, your initial service. You need to actually, create an ICO not for the product or service itself. You need to imagine and create a marketplace when products and services like your product and service can operate and can act freely. Second model is when we have a blockchain solution with mining. The most ideal model for actually this is the most ideal business model for the ICO, because there is no conflict of interest. For a real business, when you issue tokens, when you sell tokens, you are not providing any equity for people who buy your tokens. But you make unspoken promises that you will grow your token in value, which means that you need to have a leverage to grow your token. And the only source of your leverage is your business. In a traditional environment, when you give away equity, when you put money inside of your business, when you use your money from the business to put it back in your business and to grow your business, there is no conflict of interest. Because if the size of the business would grow, the size of the pie for the investors would grow as well, and the value for the investors would grow as well, so there is no conflict. In a case of ICO, there is no direct connection between the value of the company and the value of the token. So when you put money into the business, actually investors might think that you are misusing this money, because instead of growing the value of the token and satisfying the initial promises, you grow your business. It doesn't bring any value to the investors. And the more product or service-oriented business is, and the more product or service required financial attention, the more serious the conflict of interest between the token holders and between the real business environment. This is why not any company can run ICO and be successful. Why blockchain then? In the case of the blockchain, the only product and the only service company has is a token itself. So no conflict at all. And this is why, for example, the most successful ICO Okay? Okay, so this is why the most successful ICOs, the biggest ICO, is always related with companies that have a very heavy blockchain-oriented businesses who created their own versions of the blockchain. But what about the rest? If you can't create a blockchain for yourself, what's your way? Actually, there is a very simple but interesting and effective trick. You may have an ICO without having ICO. What does it mean? It means that you do create the same model of economy, closed-loop ecosystem with limited supply of your tokens, but instead of having a private sale or public sale and offering your tokens to the investors, you just put them directly to the exchange. 10 or 15%, maybe 16, maybe 20%, 30%, no more. What would happen? The system would act exactly as it would act after the ICO, no difference. But you are the owner of the most of the tokens. Why it's important? Think about it. When you give away equity, you give away part of your company. And people don't like give away equity by that particular reason. But what happens when you give away your tokens? Yeah, you keep equity, but you're actually giving away part of your future revenue. And the more tokens you give away, the more future revenue you give away as well. So if you give away 80% of your tokens, you give away 80% of the future revenue, which is exactly the same. Revenue is equivalent of the value of the company. More revenue, more value for the company. No difference, equity or revenue. The consequence for the founders are the same. You just borrow part of this revenue up front when you sell your tokens, with a huge, huge discount, by the way. So, if you can create blockchain, you can be probably a very successful ICO. If you cannot create blockchain, but you cannot be a very scalable company, if you are not from the real world, I mean, like you are not connected with the real resources, you can be successful as well. If you do have a heavy, intelligent, if your business does require a lot of investment, if your business, if you need a lot of money to develop and keep growing your products, not in terms of marketing, but in terms of R&D and technology. You need to think twice, and actually you might decide that you don't need a traditional ICO, you just want to tokenize your business without having ICO. Because if you have this 80% of the tokens for yourself, well, you can do you can grow the value of your token as well as you can do it when you do traditional ICO. But because you control most of these tokens, most of these assets, you need much less money to do so. And it's much easier, actually, for a lot of companies to grow the value of the token to $500 million valuation than to raise 50 or 100 million through the ICO process. Yes? Not equity of the company has nothing to do with. Okay, so the question was, is it better to tokenize the equity than to have an ICO? Not exact. Yes. Okay. Yes. Not exactly. Actually, when you have an ICO, you have two businesses. One is the business, is a traditional business of your company, and the second is the business of your token. And you do need your company to grow the business of your token, but they're independent. And if the economy is well designed, they can act and sustain without each other. You can drop your token at any moment. You can switch to other token, and the company would still operate successful. And you can destroy your company, and your token would be still successful as well. You just have two exits: one from the business, one from the token. Yeah, please.
We have a mic.
And I just want to make two comments. One, what you're suggesting is illegal. Two, it doesn't make economic sense.
Well, everything doesn't make any economic sense.
So what he's suggesting is basically pumping and creating artificial demand for security, which is illegal in the United States. I can go on and on about this, right? And the second thing, there is basically, from the economic standpoint, once you create artificial demand through touting, where there is no true economic value, the asset does not have it. It doesn't exist.
Well, may I ask you a question? What is the economic value of the United States dollar?
It's a means of exchange. It's supported by all of the goods and services that are provided created by the economy in the United States, GDP.
What would happen if every person would decide to spend these dollars?
That is never going to happen.
Because?
Because it's impossible.
This is a belief? I believe. Yes, the first, I will try to address the first concern. Yes, what I just said could be considered as illegal. But think about that. What would happen if I buy all the cars of very rare series, destroy 90% of them, and put the rest of the market? The same. We do operate in an environment with limited supply for most of the resources. And every resource that has a limited supply can be potentially used to speculation. And this is something we cannot, with our existing knowledge and with our existing technologies, with our existing political systems, we can handle this conflict of interest.
I think this point that you were just having here needs maybe a little bit more elaboration, because I don't know, I haven't understood it fully. Nadia is obviously an expert, and I think we should really understand her perspective. And you're on the other side as an expert also. So could we just go down to that point again? I didn't hear you talk about pumping and dumping. That is illegal, and I think we all understand that. And Nadia made the point yesterday that taking something that's artificial, right, that there's nothing there, so to speak, and pumping it and touting it and going on social media and saying all these things when there's really nothing underlying it, there's not a team, there's nobody in place, that's illegal, right? And I think, Nadia, right, you would agree? Yeah, so that's her point yesterday, right? And I didn't actually hear you say that, okay? So I wanted to try to understand what you said that got her upset, right? Not upset, but to respond, to say that what you are proposing is illegal. I think I don't want this to be lost here, because I think there's maybe a good point. So could between the both of you, could you kind of try to go back and elaborate? Because I didn't hear you say pump and dump. We know pump and dump is illegal, but what is it that he said, Nadia, that's not right? That would be really helpful.
I don't know. To me, it's just, very simple and plain. So I would like to elaborate. How do you believe that creating an artificial demand for something that does not exist, that doesn't have any real economic value, does not have an ability to provide revenue, should have, is anything other than illegal?
Well, let me ask you a question. What is the most oldest and successful corporation in the world? Yeah? Exactly. What is the real economical value of the Catholic Church? Exactly. People are, unfortunately, the creatures of emotions, and there is no such a thing as a real value, just perceived value. What is the perceived value? It's a value of the current belief of most of the people in the society. Can this belief change? Yes, over time. History teaches us that it is possible. But again, what is the value of the gold? Belief. What is the value of the diamonds? Belief, and it was created artificially. We know that. This is a history. Almost any resource we treat as a treasure was artificially created.
So then what are we doing here? Writing software, creating blockchains. Why don't we all start religions?
That's it. What is blockchain? It's a very good marketing. And actually, because people started to believe that smart contracts can replace lawyers. That blockchain is immutable enough so we can trust the blockchain. And this is great.
Sorry, we have a couple questions over here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Great point that we need to spend a couple of minutes here. Maybe what I understand what Andrey said, which created the confusion here, is value really is in the eyes of the beholder. We assign value as we understand to anything. It's purely speculative, purely personal. And then we have legal ways of having trades and exchanges supporting these speculations, no different than some other things that we do. Is that fair? Is that where your point lies?
Absolutely.
And we recognize that his point is very true, and we also recognize SEC's point is also very true. Maybe somebody in this group can help us stay clear on both sides and not get in trouble.
So I think what you said about the ICO being separate from the business helped me gain some clarity on it. The way I kind of see it, though, is from a cash flow perspective. I don't necessarily agree that the ICO is related to revenue at all. I see it from a cash flow perspective where an ICO is an innovative source of cash flow for the business and not an operating, income from operating activities, which is revenue.
Yes and no. You are absolutely correct if you are talking about pure tokenization of the business. But when we talk about the ICO, well, we are all here understand that even if there is no any promises made, we actually promises our investors, we need to be clear about that, to increase the value of the assets we provided them with. And this asset is the token. And this is the only reason people are willing to give money during the token sale, initial token sale. They expect profit. We might not put it into white paper because it's illegal. We might not sell it out loud because it's illegal. But this is the only reason why. And if you need to increase the value of something, you need a leverage. And the only leverage you have to increase the value is to grow. You cannot grow your business fast enough. Maybe for such businesses it's possible. But for the most businesses it's impossible to grow the business and scale it as fast to create a natural demand for the token 100 times more than it was initially issued. So imagine you issue token for 50 millions. 10 times more in revenue. Very good result, but it would definitely takes time. Not 2 years, not 3 years.
Yeah, I think the investor is kind of making a bet either on the tangible or intangible value of what they see in the business.
Sorry?
When they invest in the token, the perceived value is either intangible or tangible. It just kind of depends on what the investor values.
Well, 20x, investors expect 20, 30, 50x. Just look at the coin market cap. This is the argument for the investors. For the successful token, an average increase in price and in market value is 20 times. Highly risky market, very volatile market. But this is why they're willing to invest.
Wait, so one thing about the blockchain is the fact that you don't need to go to investors that need 20 or 50x. There's efficiencies in the marketplace that happen automatically where individuals in India, for instance, if you can shave them 20, 30% on interest in their capital, they have to pay to transfer it. They don't really care as much as you're not costing them so much. So the economic models differ for each individual implementation that you're trying. So your investor relations and how that token or how that system works also has to be dynamic based upon that. So I'm not quite getting your premise of having to increase the value of the token. Some tokens, you actually want a flat value. Some tokens, there's different assets and different utilities for each one of these. That's why we classify them.
Yes, but why would investors buy these tokens? Efficiency to whom? Investors want a return. Investors in a business of getting profit. They don't, I'm sorry, but they don't care and don't give a shit about the business itself.
Yeah, here's one. So on this same topic of the value of the token and increasing it, I'm wondering from the SEC's perspective, if the value of the token is increasing due to what can be purchased with it, and if you're promoting what can be purchased with the token, but not the token itself, and thereby, since there's value in what's being purchased with that token, let's say at a place like, in a situation like Chuck E. Cheese, and they've got better and better products that you can get with those tokens, and the value of those tokens then go up, is that illegal?
Well, actually, you just created a token that is backed by a real asset. Yes, the price of the token would go up with the price of the asset, if the token is only can be used to buy this particular asset. And the amount of assets you can buy for a token is limited. But at the same time, there is a very simple way to calculate the potential profit out of this token. Again, this is a good token. This is a tokenization of the business, but it is not for ICO. You can convince investors to buy these tokens.
Nadia, do you think we could get a short response? Okay.
But
yeah, hi there. There were a bunch of things you mentioned previously. One of them was that the business value of the token and the company are separate.
yes,
And then you mentioned that the token would survive even if your company ceased to exist. Okay. And then you said that the value of the token will grow as the revenue grow. So I see a contradiction there, because if your company ceased to exist, how would you make revenue on that?
well, you see, as I told, initially token has no value. Initially token has no intrinsic trust. It takes time for the token to gain this intrinsic and grow this intrinsic trust. And until this happens, yes, you need a company to create a demand for a token to fill the token with value. But after the value of the token grow, and after the token has its intrinsic value, you don't need company anymore. Bitcoin has nothing. Bitcoin has no business behind it. Ethereum has no business behind it. Almost any currency has no business behind it. Yes, okay.
Sorry, I would like to object. When you said that the Ethereum doesn't have any business, I don't think that's correct, because it's a platform. The Bitcoin is most based on speculations and hype compared to the Ethereum that actually provides a smart contract solution for the companies to do an agreements or immutable contracts.
Well, if you calculate the price of the transaction on the Ethereum, it's not a business at all, it's a pure speculation. You wouldn't pay for a cup of coffee with an Ethereum. You will pay much, 7 times more for the price of the transaction. It's not sustainable economical model. If you think about the good economical model, Ripple would be a better example.
Okay, so I just got one last question. So,
Okay, sorry, we don't have time to continue the dialogue, but this is a great lively discussion to continue during the lunch hour.